Every year, developers face the serious challenge of keeping players, well, playing. 2024 has been no different, with games that might be able to make a comeback and those that were almost guaranteed to lose their first wave of fans. First off, Helldivers 2 is still one of the biggest surprises of the year. Developer Arrowhead Game Studios likely thought that it would just be building on the niche success of its original 2015 game, but the sequel instead debuted as one of the most popular games of 2024. With excellent third-person combat and a truly unique approach to immersive and cooperative storytelling, Arrowhead's latest game quickly gained a massive player base. It just didn't manage to hold on to all of those players for very long. Helldivers 2 is still an incredible game, but it makes sense that 90% of the game's players have vanished. As a general rule, live service games struggle to keep their numbers up on a consistent basis. The game's publisher, Sony, didn't help matters when it tried to force PC players to link their Steam accounts to the PlayStation Network. The game managed to pull through that catastrophe just in time for its stream of new content to turn into a trickle. Arrowhead taking more time with its updates is great news for the game's most loyal fans, but without a constant bombardment of content, most of its players, the ones who weren't already boycotting it after the PSN debacle that is, started seeking out other games.
In this time of need, Super Earth once again calls upon her mightiest, bravest, most obedient heroes.
Palworld is another 2024 game that seemingly came out of nowhere and took the entire industry by storm. Pocket Pair's multiplayer survival game took more than a few cues from Pokémon, and that turned out to be a winning strategy. At its peak, Palworld had more than 2 million concurrent players, making it one of the most popular games in Steam's history. No game could keep up those kinds of numbers, and Palworld ended up experiencing a 97% drop in players a few months after its early access debut. With that said, Palworld still has a sizable amount of core fans, and the game has seen its concurrent player count jump into the mid-six-figure range whenever new content rolls out. One of the game's devs fired back at the Playerbase debate in early July, arguing that gamers should focus their attention on simply playing games they enjoy. That kind of fun-first approach is a big reason why Palworld didn't immediately drop off the map after its first few weeks as the game of the moment. It's likely that Palworld will continue to entertain its hardcore fanbase for a long time, but that initial drop-off briefly had some gamers predicting an untimely end for their adventures on the Palpagos Islands.
Okay, it's a showtime!
The same week that Arrowhead launched Helldivers 2, Square Enix dropped a different PlayStation exclusive that started doing numbers. Foamstars actually outperformed Helldivers 2 that week, but the success wasn't meant to last. The game also started bleeding players way faster than Arrowhead's surprise hit, losing more than half of its players in just 2 weeks. Within a couple of months, over 90% of the Foamstars player base had evaporated. If Foamstars hadn't been up against 2024 giants like Helldivers 2 and Palworld, it might have had more of a fighting chance. The game received middling reviews and unfavorable comparisons to Nintendo's beloved Splatoon franchise, but it definitely had promising elements. Unfortunately, it wasn't nearly as polished as Arrowhead's PlayStation exclusive. Foamstars is still kicking around, but the game's fate almost entirely rests on how many resources Square Enix is willing to dedicate to improving the experience for active players. We were worried about Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League well before the game actually launched. The game suffered from some delays, and despite being a full-price title, it looked like it was going to come with all the hallmarks of the worst type of live service game. An expensive battle pass, generic missions and looter-shooter gameplay, and hefty grinding requirements didn't get many people hyped for the game, and the fact that many reviewers didn't receive advanced copies made Suicide Squad seem even more concerning. Leaked cutscenes and major spoilers generated even more controversy for the game, which felt like a bizarre shift from the highs of Rocksteady's Batman Arkham franchise. The game debuted to fairly poor reviews, and it started losing players almost immediately.
God help us.
Suicide Squad launched at the end of January, and by April, it registered an active player count in the hundreds. For a while, the game even had fewer players than 2020's ill-fated Marvel's Avengers. Like the other games on this list, Suicide Squad has continued crawling forward, with Warner Bros. Continuing to produce content.